Hey guys, Fear the Great White here. I got a true story for you today. Whitlock Lake's Mystery. To understand why my mother and I were out at Whitlock Lake, I have to give you a little background on us. My mother and I run a wreath business in a quiet northern Michigan town. Violent crimes are virtually non-existent. It was fall. Around this time of year, the forest in Michigan becomes rich with color. This day was full of warmth and color. Instead of buying the pine cones for decorating our wreaths, we decided to go foraging for them in the local woods. I knew about Whitlock Lake from my high school days. Some of my friends and I went out there a couple of times to party. It's a small camping area with just about 3 sites. This lake is connected with another bigger lake a few miles down the road. It's in a small old logging town called Jennings. Population 20, maybe, a little less, a little more. The times I went out there as a high school student, it never had a strange feeling in the air. But the day my mother and I went to forage, the air was thick with fear, and we felt like we were being watched. We thought maybe it was just a small woodland creature hiding and watching, waiting for us to leave, so we continued. About an hour goes by and we decided to move on. We moved to where the forest meets the water. There are cute, tiny little baby pine cones that we use for our tabletop wreaths. Shortly after we found ourselves at the edge of the lake, we heard a few gunshots from across the lake. We live in northern Michigan. People are getting ready for hunting season around this time of year, so we shrugged it off. We got into our car and moved down the trail. When we got out of my car, I noticed quite a few shotgun shells on the ground. Again, it's not uncommon to find shells of any sort on the ground this time of year, so we continued. We were at the end of the trail with the last 2 campsites on either side of the trail. We continued foraging for about 20 more minutes. As we walked across the trail to the next site, we noticed something very strange. At the opening of the campsite, we noticed a tall 5 or 6 foot wooden pole. On top of that pole, we saw 2 leather straps wafting in the wind. To us, that was strange. Why would someone want leather straps on top of a pole? Of course, we put it out of our minds and continued. A short while later, we stumbled upon an old beat-up mattress that looked like it had been there for a while now. As we got closer to the mattress, the ground around it was very mucky. As soon as you stepped somewhere and you sunk about half a foot down. People dump garbage in the woods a lot up here. We started walking past it to get to the pine cones on the other side. This horrible smell seeped into our nostrils. We both looked at each other at the same time and we got the hell out of there. By now, we were scared out of our wits. As we were driving out of the trailhead, we met a guy in a red Cadillac type vehicle. The look on his face scared the bejesus out of us. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe it was all in our heads. I would like to think that my mother and I have a good sense for that sort of thing, and we got out of there just in the nick of time. Needless to say, my mother and I have never been back to the lake and don't plan on going back ever. About a week later, I couldn't hold this event inside myself anymore, so I called the cops and recalled the incident as best as I could. They said that they would look into it, and I haven't heard anything since. This happening still haunts me to this day. I'm always thinking about what may have actually happened out there. This is a true story. The ShadowMan. While this isn't an encounter or anything, this has been said to me that this is a spooky story. I was always a kid with a short fuse. I was somewhat violent, but never towards people. Always just objects, such as pillows or walls. But I had been told that I would say things I shouldn't. I was often told to watch my actions, and since I was about 7, I am now 17, I have had dreams about this man who I named the ShadowMan. As all you could see was his outline of a man with a hat. As all you could see was his outline of a man with a hat on, his red eyes, and his white pointy teeth. Kind of like a killer clown. The dream would start kind of like a killer clown. The dream would start out with me. The dream would start out with me in the darkness, and then I would look down to see my hands with blood on them, and then I would see heads and faces of my friends and family. It wasn't stated, but I knew I was the one that caused it, even at the age of 7. Then all of a sudden, I would hear a chant of, "Watch your actions," and the voice was mine, but distorted. After the taunting few minutes of this, all of a sudden I would see the ShadowMan, and his creepy-ass grin would widen. Then I would see a dagger either in my hands or one of the victims, and if it was the victim, I would grab it, but then as quick as I blink, the ShadowMan would then stab me and then say his last words that sends chills down my spine to this day. "All actions have consequences." The last words I hear before dying, which resulted in me waking up, but it wasn't in a panic. A few years later, I decided to write a poem for it, and I wanted an image, so I just Googled the ShadowMan, and I read that other people had also seen the same kind of man as I described, but not the exact same. I told other people in my life about this dream, and man, a handful of them can tell a similar tale, either from their own experience or from someone else's they know. Each time someone told me about their story, it just made me uncomfortable. Not from the actual creepiness, but because the stories were not of my ShadowMan. Just the thought of the fact I might be attached to this tormentor of my childhood makes the entire experience so much worse. To this day, I've wrote 2 poems, and the second one has been somewhat successful. So I'm creating a short film as a visual representation of the poem. It will be done near the middle of the year. If you would like to read the poems, I will post them, but I have calmed down so I don't get the dreams as often. But the last words were, "All actions have consequences." Even now, if I hear someone say, "What's your action?" I feel uneasily and go silent. But remember, people, all actions have consequences. This is another true story. Here's another true story. It's called Mr. S. I was at my favorite aunt and uncle's house the day before my 6th birthday, and would also be staying there that night, giving my parents time to get the house ready. The day had already been a blast. We had gotten ice cream. I had gotten to play in the park and help my aunt out at the pharmacy. I don't know why, but for some reason I loved going there. I've always been shy, and all the people made me nervous, so I think it was just that I got to spend time with my aunt. Anyway, back to the story. We got back from my aunt's work, and she goes in, blah, blah, blah. Mr. S. This is a true story. I was at my favorite aunt and uncle's house the day before my 6th birthday, and would be also staying the night there, giving my parents time to get the house ready. The day had been a blast. We had gotten ice cream. I had gotten to play at the park and help out my aunt at the pharmacy. I don't know why, but for some reason I loved going there. I've always been shy, and all the people made me nervous, so I think it was just because I got to spend time with my aunt. Anyway, back to the story. We got back from my aunt's work, and she went inside to start making dinner. Meanwhile, I played catch out in the backyard with my uncle, laughing when their dog barked at us. A few minutes in, and my uncle accidentally threw the ball into the woods. "I'll get it," I yelled and took off. I don't remember exactly what happened in the woods, but I do remember finding the ball, and then turning around to find I had no idea how to get back out. After that, my memory gets fuzzier, but this is what I was told happened. "Isabella," my uncle yelled when he saw me, looking half scared and half relieved. "You were in there for 10 minutes. What happened?" I handed him the ball and said with a grin, "I got lost, and I was scared, but then Mr. S helped me find my way out." "Mr. S?" My uncle made a face as he looked down at me. None of the neighbors called themselves that. In fact, I knew all the neighbors. I smiled back and nodded. "Yep." "Dinner time," my aunt called out the back door before he could ask me anything else. At the table, once we started eating, my aunt spoke up. Apparently, she had heard me out in the backyard. "Who's Mr. S? I'd like to thank him for helping you." I shrugged. "I don't know. He was just out in the woods." "Can you tell us what he looks like?" my uncle asked. I looked at them and said, "I kid you not. He was really, really tall and didn't have a face." "That's nice," my aunt just laughed, assuming I was talking about an imaginary friend of some sort. Fast forward to last year, I was 17 years old, and with my aunt again. She was staying with us for a week, looking for a new house. I was on my couch playing Slender, The Arrival, on my laptop. She walked over and asked what I was doing, and then froze. "What is it?" I asked, giving her a confused look. She pointed at the screen and said, "That thing. What is it called?" "Slenderman," I said. "Why?" My aunt just asked me if I remembered the day before my 6th birthday. I nodded and told her I remembered some of it. She proceeded to tell me about how I said Mr. S helped me find my way out of the woods, and how the description I gave of him matched Slenderman's. I wouldn't have known anything about creepypasta at that age, so that's really freaked me out. The thing I saw the day my friend died. This happened years ago, but it's still something that sticks with me. This all happened like a sequence. You never know if things are supposed to happen for a reason, or if some unknown outside force influences it. But first, a backstory. My friend, let's call her Jenny, was a cheery, happy-go-lucky young woman. She rode one of them crotch rocket bikes and loved riding it, always up for new and exciting things. She took a job as a security guard for the casino I worked at. She was always that ray of sunshine that would bring you up if you were having a bad day. Even when she was feeling down, she always made it a point to make sure you were feeling better. After a year, she was promoted to a gaming officer. She was really happy, as this was an entry point to get into the upstairs offices. She would tell me often that if she got in, she would try to get me in with her. I worked on the floor, paying out jackpots and getting change for gamers. Not long after her promotion, she started acting funny. Not so much that people noticed it right away, but enough that I noticed it. She would come to work tired and come in late, but never said why. I noticed her attitude changed as well. She was more jumpy and cautious than normal. One time, during a conversation we were having on the floor, she stopped, and just as I first thought, stared at me. I realized after a little bit that she wasn't staring at me, but behind me. I turned, but saw nothing. She seemed to snap out of it after a bit, and brushed it off as losing her track of thought. I never questioned it at the time. One day, she came in 2 hours late. Her superior wasn't too happy. He had actually sought me out on the floor to see if I could get a hold of her. When she did come in, she looked worse for wear. She was unkempt, baggy red eyes, and jittery. When questioned by her superior, she put it as a late night out. But when she came to the floor, she pulled me aside and asked to meet up after work. We met at Denny's, and she proceeded to tell me what was going on. She, as she put it, was having weird shit happen to her. It started subtly at first, a chill here, a noise there. Nothing she couldn't explain away, but as time progressed, things got weirder. The chills got colder, the noises got louder and more frequent. Things were never where she left them. Then it started happening at work. Her desk was always rearranged from how she left it. She thought that someone was messing with her, even voicing her concerns, but nobody ever came forward. When she was walking to the floor, she would feel a tap on her shoulder or a tug on her shirt with nobody around. When she would walk to her office, which was located near the uniform room in a less trafficked area of the building, she always heard footsteps in line with hers, as if someone was walking right behind her. She was afraid to use the restrooms as well, if no one was with her. It was there one day she said she got scared real bad. Answering the call of nature, she had just begun when she said there was a single light knock on the stall door. She had announced herself in the stall, and when someone knocked again, this time 2 of them, louder than the first, she had said she was using it, and to use another one when the door began to rattle as if someone was jiggling the handle. Then it stopped. She said she was about to get up when, to her horror, the sliding lock began slowly to move, unlocking itself. Jenny said she flung the door open and no one was there. When she got out of the stall, no one was in there. She was about to walk out when, turning toward the stalls, she said she saw a dark mass, humanoid looking, peeking out behind the further stall. She said she has seen it often since. The day she was really late, she said she was awoken from her sleep. It was night, her room was dark, and she couldn't speak or move. She tried to, she told me, but she couldn't. And she had a dreaded feeling like she wasn't alone. The only thing she could do was move her eyes, she recalled. And she happened to look up with them, seeing this humanoid mass looking right down at her, a faint glow where eyes would be. She said she closed her eyes and was able to scream, finally gaining control of her body. She jumped up out of the bed and tried to turn on the light beside the bed, but it wouldn't work. The mass then started to come towards her, blocking her bedroom door. She says she ran into the closet and shut it. The light in the closet worked. She said she was afraid of opening the door. She heard it moving around in the room. She fell asleep in there, not waking till late in the morning. Got quickly dressed and came in, hence her appearance. The last week of her life, she stayed with me. Despite the odd occurrence at work, nothing ever happened at my place. She was peaceful. She was sleeping and eating again. And on her days off, she reported nothing happening. The day she died was one of the strangest and scariest days of my life. It started with me going in like normal. I came in at 8, and Jenny came in an hour later. Things were pretty normal, and at 12 we went to lunch. During lunch, she told me that she was going to go back to her place. The last week was pretty good, and she hoped that whatever it was, had finally left her alone. After that, we went back to our posts. About half an hour after lunch, my supervisor calls me in the office and says one of the swing shift people called out and asked if I could pull a double. If I agreed, I could take the next day off or come in and get the overtime. So I agreed. After that, I got the strangest feeling, like I was being watched. I couldn't explain it. I felt someone was staring at me in the empty parts of the floor. Jenny told me that she had started to feel a weight being lifted off of her, so she agreed. After that, I got the strangest feeling, like I was being watched. I couldn't explain it. I felt someone staring at me from the empty parts of the floor. Jenny told me that she started to feel like a weight was being lifted off of her, but she also felt like I was in trouble somehow. She said something in the back of her head said that someone was mad at me, like they hated me, but she didn't know who, nor could she explain why it was that the specific feeling. My second shift started, and her extra hours started like this. Some of my coworkers reported feeling uneasy around me while Jenny said that she was becoming like her old self again. When Jenny was getting ready to end her shift at 11 in the evening, that night I took my final break to say goodbye. As I was getting out, an hour after her, she said she felt free for the first time in what felt like forever. She wanted to enjoy her ride home. She said she would text me when she made it. We hugged. I saw her off for what would be the last time. Needing to get back on the floor, I had the call of nature beckoning me, but I decided I could hold it, or so I thought. As I was making my rounds, that urge came at me strong, literally forcing me to make a mad rush to the employee restroom. I ran in and got to the nearest urinal. Relieved, I washed my hands and started to leave when a light, soft knock came from the direction of the stalls. There, peeking out from the farther stall, was a black mass, humanoid looking, with a soft glow where their eyes should be. I blinked and it was gone. I stood frozen there, literally trying to rationalize if I saw something or not. I looked at the time on my phone. 20 minutes had passed since Jenny left. I looked up, and there it was again. Only this time, I got this really bad feeling that something was wrong, and I bolted out of there. That image was burned into my memory, and has been ever since. I called Jenny, but it went to voicemail. I finished the rest of my shift with that dreaded feeling. After work, I went home and I tried calling again. Only voicemail. I left her a message to get back to me ASAP. That feeling stayed with me till I fell asleep. My sister broke the news to me in the morning. Her boyfriend was an EMT that responded to an accident call. He, Jenny, and I, as well as my sister, had all gone to high school together. Being the one that took the call, he was shocked to find her off the road, about 40 feet to be exact, dead with a broken neck. She had hit the safeguard, this metal piece that curved with the road. He thought it was weird that she would have landed 40 feet away, seeing that the speed limit at the turn was only like 20, and that later it was determined that she hit it going 10 miles per hour. No alcohol nor drugs were found in her system, so they thought that she probably fell asleep, and when she hit, she landed neck first and slid to a halt. Though I was later told by my sister's boyfriend that when he got there, he didn't see anything that looked like she slid. The ground, he remembered, was undisturbed. This has haunted me for a while now. A few weeks ago, I dreamed Jenny was talking to me. I couldn't hear her, and she had this blank, almost emotionless expression. She then points behind me, and there it is, the thing I saw the day my friend died. I am by no means an artist or a painter. Hell, I can hardly draw. But after that dream, I had to try to depict what I saw in the restroom all those years ago. This is the closest I've gotten to it. One more thing I forgot to mention. When the time of death was given, it was around 11:20, about the same time I saw that fucking thing. Update. It's been years since I've been in that casino. Recently I went back to my hometown where it's located to catch up with old friends who still work there. Apparently that thing is following another friend of mine like it did Jenny. My friend suffered a nervous breakdown during his shift. The girl I spoke to said he was always acting weirder than normal, culminating in him screaming and ranting about the ShadowMan that won't leave him alone. Only a close few people know about what Jenny went through and what I experienced, and the girl I spoke to was one of them. She mentioned that other things have been happening. My brother, who started security there a few years ago, mentioned something creepy he once witnessed. The security team usually has a driver who rides around the parking lot to make sure that the parking areas and the back part of the casino is safe. Behind the casino are these dumpster areas that the food and beverage custodial teams use. Well, my brother tells me that one night he went on break. There's this patio area outside that employees use to sit outside or to smoke. There's a wall around it, but on the other side is the dumpsters. He goes to the patio and with one of the food and beverage girls to smoke. During this time, they hear faint crying. At the same time, over his radio, he hears the truck driver calling in a female he spotted crying in the corner of the dumpsters. He says the driver describes her as short, with long dark hair, wearing a blue sweater and jeans, and no shoes on. She's crouched in the corner with her back to him, sobbing, as he said, loud. My brother, of course, being on the opposite side of the wall, can barely hear the crying. Well, he then says the driver calls it into surveillance. There are 2 cameras that point in that direction, one seeing that particular corner very well. After he calls it in, surveillance gets back to him, asking what he's talking about. This is how he put it. Surveillance. What are you calling in again? Driver. A female in the corner of the dumpster is crying. She is not responding to my calls. Surveillance. Okay, we see you. We don't see a girl. Driver. What do you mean? She's right in front of me. Surveillance. No, sir. All we see is you. No one else. Driver. Are you serious? You really don't see the girl right here? Surveillance. No, sir. If you're joking, then it's a bad one, not to mention a waste of our time. That's about the time my brother says the crying stopped, followed by a shriek from the driver and him burning rubber out of there. My brother went on to say that the driver was visibly shaken and trembling. When pressed by a supervisor about what happened, he related that after surveillance said she wasn't there, she stopped crying and stood up, her head falling back like it had no neck bones, and then started to walk backwards towards him with her head dangling side to side. He shrieked and got out of there. What was disturbing as well to my brother was that later the driver said that when her head fell back, it had no face. I must say some creepy shit is going on there. I wonder though, the way he described the girl, I wonder if it was Jenny. Even though she didn't die at that casino, I wonder if that thing is keeping her trapped there. Alright guys, if you hung around this far, then you're pretty loyal. I appreciate it. Don't forget to go hit the like button. If you know anybody else you think might like it, or if you think everybody else might like it, hit the share button. If you think it sucks, leave me a comment. If you like it, leave me a comment. Any feedback is good feedback. If you think it's so stupid and sucky that people might laugh at it and share it, that's awesome too. I really suck at these outros and intros. Yeah. Thanks for hanging around, guys. Thanks for watching. I appreciate everything. Appreciate all of you guys that I appreciate everybody that subscribed. I'm still amazed at how fast this channel has grown. We hit kind of a slump here in the last few days, but mostly because I've been so busy working that I hadn't had time to get any videos up or my normal antics on Twitter. If you hadn't already, follow me on Twitter. Fear the Great White 511 actually. I love all my great ones. Peace. Have a good night. Love you guys. Out.